Hello.
Hi.
Kayla Lords.
John Brownstone.
Of Loving BDSM, where we help kinksters like you have happy, healthy power exchange relationships. We're back to answer a question from a submissive. Do you notice? It's mainly submissives who send in questions.
Yeah.
I got thoughts, my dominant friends out there. And Lola is making sure she's getting loving.
She is.
Before we even answer the question.
Yep.
Okay, let's jump into it. It's long, kind of complicated, convoluted. I don't know. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot
here.
to it, yeah.
Yeah, here we go. I've been dating a dom for about a year. He's poly and has a committed relationship with someone else. I am not his priority. He is the first person I've had a kinky relationship with, while he has been doing this for 6 years. While seeing him, I noticed that he does not enjoy closeness after sex. We don't engage in anything too rough. I never have any physical wounds or bruises to attend to, but I've let him know that I'd enjoy closeness after sex, and he will sometimes initiate it, but more often than not, he will want to simply leave and keep it very short. Before sex, we chat and share openly about other dating experiences and life in general, and he always tries to be supportive when I share life struggles. Last time before we met, I asked him if we could spend time together after sex. He said of course, and after we had sex, he suggested we leave the house and get some cake and coffee. He also said that I needed to decide in the next 10 minutes if I wanted to do that since we had to go get the bus. I was completely overwhelmed and not really in the right headspace to make that decision, but I just said, okay, let's do that. In the cafe, I realized that I was not doing well, and I told him that I really would have needed aftercare. His response was that I should have communicated that to him right after sex, that I needed longer aftercare, and that aftercare is the thing that is always assumed to be a given, but nobody ever asks him if he enjoys it, and it's a way of putting my own needs on him. He is usually able to read my body language, and I was not doing well. At some point, I showed him that I was shaking. I said that it was very unfair to expect me to be assertive right after having sex while being in the submissive role, and that I needed more time to recover. He said that if he lays down after sex, he will just fall asleep. We ended the conversation by agreeing that he will try to take longer aftercare more into consideration, and I will try to communicate it in the right moment after sex. I also had not eaten well that day, and this caused me to be more exhausted than usual. He said I should tell him this, and he will make a meal for me. I'm starting to realize that it is not easy for me to communicate these things because I do want to please him and not annoy him. But when I got home, I realized that his position and comments about aftercare really annoyed me, regardless of the way we left the issue, and that his general lack of concern and distance after sex has caused me to trust him less, especially since it was a total switch to the way he acts before. I also was hurt because I felt that he was looking down at me for lacking communication skills and not taking responsibility for my own needs, instead of maybe just showing empathy that I wasn't feeling so great. In many ways, I felt like he was being that arrogant poly person that mansplains himself into not taking responsibility or dodging around the issue. Because isn't aftercare his responsibility as a dom? And even if there is no one way to do aftercare, am I really putting my needs onto him by expecting that he takes the responsibility? We never agreed to skip aftercare. We also will cuddle for maybe a minute or two, but he has already moved on to the next thing. He probably considers this aftercare while I don't. I sent him a pretty in-your-face text message. I told him that I would like a deeper connection with him and that being submissive without aftercare is exhausting. I asked him why closeness after sex is so difficult for him. We basically got into an argument, and he said that he expects people who have a deeper connection to him to be able to communicate directly what they need. I said that I need to be allowed to communicate the way that I can, not fulfill his standards. Everything else is unrealistic and doesn't honor my whole being with my weaknesses and strengths. I feel like he doubled down on his assholeness and confirmed that he was looking down on me for not communicating the right way. He also said that he wanted to meet to talk about this in person and not via text, and told me when I can expect a meeting, and if I needed to talk it out beforehand, we could chat on the phone. He also said that for him, a deeper connection hadn't evolved yet, that it takes time, and he doesn't have that with every person. I don't really think that this connection is going to last, and I don't even know if I want to explain to him how not okay his behavior is. But there's a part of me, though, who thinks, what if I am not taking enough responsibility? Am I being a teenager who expects my mind to be read and then putting my being miserable onto him? I did send him that in-your-face text because I was feeling hurt. I probably would never have said it to him like that in person, and I can't tell if it was overkill or if I was simply able to communicate my feelings honestly because I could write it out. I do feel like his expectations of me are unfair and that he's exploiting the fact that I'm submissive and therefore struggle with displeasing him so he can get away with not doing a lot of aftercare. At the same time, am I using my identity as a submissive to avoid direct communication and standing up for my needs? Please help. There's a lot
There's
there.
a lot. There is a lot. You are not kidding. Wow.
Sorry for anybody who might have zoned out because there's a lot. Hopefully we'll hit the salient points here.
Right.
I feel like this is one of those, am I the asshole or are they the asshole? And
I don't think either one.
I don't either.
All right. There is a lot going on. Communication on both sides. Okay, both sides, not just one or the other, both. And I'm going to say this straight out because listening to this, I don't see any like glaring red flags jumping out in any of this. And I think what we really got here is just an incompatibility.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Because, let's face it, and we talked about this in earlier episodes about hierarchy of needs in kink.
I'll link to that in the show notes and places.
To this person, it sounds like aftercare is something that's very important to them.
Oh, yeah. I think that's very clear.
Yeah.
For sure.
mean, it's very clear that this person, states that, aftercare is needed, or at least into some depth.
Right.
Okay. More than a couple minutes. And to him, aftercare is not that big of a deal.
And I thought it was a little telling that there was a little bit of a whiny rant about how people expect aftercare from him and just put it on him like he's supposed to do it. But what about how he feels? And it's look.
I know.
That I don't consider that a red flag. I do consider that you clearly have some feelings here that you haven't talked about with somebody at some point.
Or some kind of misconception of what
aftercare is. Yeah.
So, there is a lot going on, and he does tell this person that they are not his priority.
Yeah, that can't be easy to hear.
No.
And they didn't say that he said they weren't the priority. I think they just know based on whatever.
Yeah.
And maybe they did say it. But I guess he was being honest when he said that they hadn't developed
a deeper connection.
Yeah, no, the submissive states at the very beginning, I am not his priority, but they never say
that's true. He
told me.
Said that, yeah.
Either right. They've gleaned that, or maybe he has told them, but either way, they, regardless of what he has said to them, they are walking away with, I am not his priority. Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of coming through here.
It is definitely coming through. It can be tough balancing multiple relationships.
As a practicing polydom, you kind of know.
It is tough. We have a sort of a unique situation as far as you and I. We are married. You are my baby girl submissive. You are my business partner in multiple ventures.
We take care of a family together.
We take care of a family and a home together.
Right. We are as tight as tight
as
can
interconnected as can be. And it's hard to step away from those things. Okay? And yet when I go and see the person that I'm currently seeing, I try to make them the priority for the time we have.
Right. And I do my part to let you do that. Like, short of an emergency, you're not going to really hear from me.
Right. I mean, you even told me, said, if something major happens or somebody's sick or dying,
Right. I'm going to leave you alone outside of that. Yeah.
So,
But that means that when you're with your other partner, you're, like you said, you're making them the priority so that they feel like they have your attention.
I try to do my best.
Right. Now, I don't get any indication based on what's been said here that that's not what they're doing. I think the little bit I might glean from it is, okay, well, once we're done with like our kinky sex or whatever, he's kind of ready to move on. Well, then my question is, move on to what? Move on to other activities with this partner, or move on with the rest of his life and leave and be done?
Right.
And I think that the answer to that determines the connection and the prioritizing and all of that. Ultimately, this is a serious failure of communication.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
I take from here, they have tried to have conversations about aftercare, but I don't know that those conversations were very detailed. This is exactly what I would like. This is what I'm looking for. This is what aftercare means to me. You know, talking about it beforehand, well in advance, having it sort of baked in so it's understood every time there needs to be aftercare. Did that conversation ever actually take place?
It does not sound like it.
It does not.
And it also sounds like what has been talked about. There is no, the submissive has an idea of what aftercare should be. The big D has an idea of what aftercare is to them.
Doesn't seem to enjoy it anyway.
Right.
And already has his feelings about it.
And not everybody does.
No, but the thing is aftercare should, to me, can and should be provided by both sides of the slash, right?
Sure.
What that looks like is different in every situation and for everybody because it's uniquely personal. Yeah. But aftercare provided by the dom to the submissive, especially when there's been a power exchange or their submissive's been on the receiving end of kinky acts, is one, to kind of help them come back to the headspace, but two, to make sure that they are healthy and good and right. It is not... It can be, but it is not just for give me a quick cuddle and let me know I'm cared for. It's let me make sure you're fucking okay here. Yeah. And so for the dom to kind of go, well, I don't really care about aftercare. Well, you don't care about making sure your submissive partner is doing okay.
And the thing is, for some people too, they may be fine right after a scene, and then a day or two later is when they will drop. Now, to me, the glaring thing in this too is that they are not, aside from the glaring incompatibility.
Yeah, I think they're very incompatible.
The only other thing that, could possibly rectify this to a certain extent is the fact that no one's willing to compromise, it seems.
And it does not. I don't see any discussion happening of, okay, how do we meet in the middle so everybody gets what they need?
Yeah.
The other thing that I empathize with the submissive. They don't want to speak up because they don't want to be an annoyance. Well, my first question is that because your dominant partner is making you feel like you are? Or is this something you've internalized from past relationships, what you think a submissive is supposed to be, just who you are and what you've experienced in life? So that's the first thing. The dominant seems to be saying, I need clear, concise communication. And the submissive isn't there yet. Now, I think it is an individual's responsibility to learn what you can about communication skills and improving your own skills, but also the only way we really improve is to practice.
Exactly.
And so this person, the submissive, needs to gain those skills. They need to work on those skills, but that dominant needs to be willing to go, okay, I see you're struggling here. How can I help you? Let me ask some questions. Let me be curious about what you're trying to tell me.
Because as the dominant in the relationship, you are the one who technically takes the lead.
Right, you're leading. Okay? You have control and power.
You're leading. Right. You've negotiated the power and whatever else you have. And you had trouble communicating in the beginning.
Right. So we found workarounds.
Okay. We found workarounds and I made it comfortable for you to want to communicate.
And if I was not telling you something directly, this to me is a top tip for all dominants out there with a submissive who struggles to communicate. You would just ask direct questions. Yeah. You got curious. Like, I'm not, and maybe it's maybe it's because the quote connection is not there. Maybe it's because he's not making this partner a priority. Whatever it is, I am not getting that this dominant partner is curious enough to say, what do you need from aftercare? How are you feeling? Right?
And I think that dips back to her not feeling like a priority.
Them. We don't know.
Them. Yeah.
Right. One thing that kind of struck me, and I want to be kind and considerate and empathetic to the submissive who has clearly struggled here. I want to push back a bit on my partner should not expect me to be assertive after I've been in the submissive headspace. Everybody has their own way and personality and how submission affects them. And so it is entirely possible that it takes you a hot minute to come out of submissive headspace, and maybe that's part of what aftercare needs to be, to let you do that. But it is not a partner's responsibility to expect you that you will or will not speak up about your own needs. If you know you struggle with that, if you know that after a scene or some kinky sex where you were really feeling your submissive self, that it takes you a minute to kind of come back and go, okay, I can assert myself, I can speak on my behalf.
Right.
That has to be part of the discussion of, hey, I need this aftercare to get me into that. And some of this stuff you can't discuss until you learn it about yourself, right? But in this very long email that came through, they said, well, he should just know that I'm not going to be assertive. No. Once you figure that out about yourself and you realize you're still not getting what you need, or you're not feeling heard and seen, then it is your responsibility as the submissive to go, hey, here's what I'm learning about myself. And of course you have to do it outside of the scene and outside of the moment, because you have to wait till you're coming back to yourself. I can't be as straightforward and assertive as you need me to be to make decisions, right? I can't do that in a few minutes. I'm whether it's your wiring or it's the headspace, I need some time to come back to myself.
Sure.
It sounds like, I really feel like these two people are like at cross purposes. They are on the different sides of the slash, but they are not on the same path towards one another.
No.
You know, he seems to want a very specific type of person, has very specific types of expectations, and is not seeming to work with his submissive partner on getting them to that point where his expectations can get closer to being met. At the same time, maybe it's because they're a new submissive. I would definitely say, as they admit towards the end, they struggle to communicate. They are not being clear with their dominant partner. I don't have a problem that they got away from the situation, went home, thought about the conversation that took place, and sent off an angry text. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
I think that that's pretty common for people who, especially for people who struggle to communicate clearly in the moment, because you're having to deal with all of the stimuli coming at you from this conversation. What do I actually think? And I don't know. And that sounds good. And then you get away where you can be kind of quiet and with your own thoughts. And then you think through it and you go, what the hell? No, I'm not okay with that. And we, as individuals on any side of any slash, get to come back to a conversation and say, you know, we talked about that thing. And in the moment, yeah, I know what I said. I should not have said that. Here's how I'm feeling right now upon further reflection. We all get that ability, everybody, right? So taking that opportunity and saying how you felt once you had time to sort of process, you're not wrong for that at all. But I do think that the lessons need to start being learned here about what is the submissive partner's responsibilities, what is the dominant partner's responsibilities. And I think some are a little bit of, I hate to say this because it means people have to assume things, and I don't like that, but some things are kind of a given. Aftercare for a submissive partner is the dom's responsibility to provide, because the submissive partner was on the receiving end of some shit. So that aftercare needs to be within the boundaries of the dominant partner, but needs to be focused on the submissive and what they need to get themselves back to where they can function again. That does not mean that a dominant partner does not deserve aftercare. It does mean that that aftercare either will not come from that submissive or cannot come from that submissive until they're able to function again, depending on what their needs are for aftercare. I think that, you know, the most telling part is this person knows they're not a priority, and their dom has said after a year, well, we don't have that connection. Well, when the fuck are you going to develop that connection? After a year? I feel like the answer's there. Now, for the submissive partner, they hit the nail on the head about kind of what works for them. And if they wanted to continue with this dominant partner, this is the conversation. They said, I am communicating better in writing. then you need to use writing until maybe you never can, but until you get to a point where your communication skills allow you to verbalize it in some way, use other methods. And your dominant partner who wants that clear communication, to me, ought to be willing to go, this is what you need. This is what will get me the clear communication that I require. Go for it. Let's do it that way. It's a valid form of communication. And for some people, it's going to be easier. I still, to this day, after all these years, way better at writing out my thoughts. Because I can edit and I can make sure I'm saying what I actually mean, and I can organize my thoughts, and I can go over it 85 times before I hit send or hit print or hand you the piece of paper, 2 or 3 of them double-sided with my loopy handwriting, like whatever it is, right? That's a valid form.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I don't think anybody here is displaying a single, like, true red flag. I think other people could, reasonable people could disagree based on your own experiences. But based on how it's being described, I think these are 2 kinksters who are at different points in their kink life, and there's not enough binding them together for them to figure out how to meet each other where the other is at. Like, to me, a dominant who really wants to be with that submissive and is like really invested in that relationship,
they're going to put the effort into it. Yeah.
And they're going to be like, look, I know you don't have the skills yet, right? I'm going to keep that in mind. I might even help you develop those skills, right? I'm going to work within your communication style. I'm going to ask more fucking questions. I'm going to get curious because I know you don't have these skills yet.
Yeah.
At the same time, the submissive has to take the responsibility to learn those things, has to, realize, and some of this just comes with time and experience, that, communicating your wants and needs is not you being annoying.
No.
Saying you don't like something that your dominant did is not being annoying. The question I have on that line somewhere in here where they were like, I worried about being annoying. The follow-up question I would have is that because that's the vibe you're getting from your partner, or is that some insecurity you have for outside of this relationship and you worry about that? Those are 2 separate things.
Sure.
Because one, you just get the practice and you have a partner who, you feel safe with and you learn to trust, and so then you kind of overcome that. Or you have a partner who makes you feel like an annoyance. And to me, that's all the information you need at that point.
Yep.
What are you doing in this relationship with a partner who treats you like your wants and needs are annoying? Yeah. That doesn't make them a bad person. It makes you fundamentally incompatible. So, if I were telling this person, should you even try? I mean, it's easy to be on the outside and go, why?
Yeah.
But, it's...
I mean, the thing is, if they really do want to try and say they put their all into it, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of people need that to know that they have done everything they can.
Absolutely.
Before they can, break away from a situation. So, that being said, if this is really something that you want to try to continue with this person, you need to work on the communication. Okay, absolutely communication. Text.
You can't tell tone.
You can't
text.
tell tone and
intention,
intention, inflection type of thing from text. Email, a little better. Because you can, you have enough space to express yourself per se. So, there needs to be definite communication. And from everything that I've heard in all this, there needs to be some meeting in the middle.
Yeah, and there can't be assumptions on either side. There's no assuming that this is fully a dominance responsibility. There are some things that, yes, it falls under the dom job description, but you as a submissive are still responsible for making sure that you advocate for yourself.
Right.
You speak up for yourself. You let your partner know, hey, I didn't quite get what I needed. It doesn't mean you'll do it perfectly. It doesn't mean that the first couple times you might not be like shaking in your boots and like nervous sweat and just like to try to do it. Of course, it gets easier with time and with a partner who sort of encourages that, right? Yeah. But no, we do not walk around assuming a dominant just knows because you gave them 3 words one time. But on the flip side, we do not walk around dominance. You do not walk around assuming that your partner just
Right.
whatever.
I mean, they did say in the question about how, they know body language. I know your body language too, but even that is not.
It's not perfect.
It's not perfect. All it takes is to read something wrong, and you may have yourself in some space you don't want to be in.
Right.
Trying to trouble. It is better to say the thing.
Better to over communicate at this point.
Yeah.
There may come a time where you don't need that as much, and some things do become understood as the shorthand of your relationship, and so you need to speak up when something is different than usual.
Right.
But if you are this far into a power exchange and aftercare is still not happening at a level that you feel that you need to process and move on, then there's been a breakdown of communication, which, based on what we've read, it feels like it.
Right.
And or, because both can be true, a total incompatibility.
Yeah.
And there's no point in continuing forward if, like you said, you can't find some middle ground to meet in. Like, yes, you struggle with communication and your dom wants a certain type of communication. Well, if that's what they want from you, then to me, what they need to do is to help you get there.
Right.
Like, that's just how that works.
And that's kind of the thing. I mean, with the dominant, once you take on the responsibility of a submissive, it's not all about the fun and games the whole time.
Right.
You are there to basically help each other.
Yes.
Grow and.
But as a dominant, if you have specific things you want from a submissive partner that they are willing to give you, then it is your job to help them get to that point.
Yes.
Like, we're all adults here, and so a submissive partner needs to be the adult and go practice that or learn or get the resources or whatever, right? But you, dom, have certain criteria you want your submissive to meet, then it is your job to help them do that. Simple as that.
Yep.
So yeah, this was complicated. I don't think there are any easy or right answers.
No.
But personally, I think there's an incompatibility issue.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so if you have thoughts and opinions on this one, which I expect you might, feel free to drop those in the comments below. If you have your own question, the link to submit a question for a future one of these is in the description box. And if you have enjoyed this on some level, we'd love a thumbs up. If you like it enough to want to come back for more, please consider subscribing.
And go ahead and ring that notification bell. Get updates and new content.
Just do what Daddy says. Life is easier, I have found. I'm just saying. And if you really like what we do, want to help us keep doing more of it and get access to our Discord server and some extra content, you can join us on Patreon, patreon.com/KaylaLords.